First thing, and today I'm only going to talk about that, is a 360-degree view of of your object, right, of your element. I will be just choosing one, doesn't matter which one, or I'm just choosing this one, isolated. I'll be working with this element right here. I'll create a 360-degree camera loop around this object, so that basically it's going to be rendered out and it's just going to look like something like that, right? Camera going around it. Okay, so to do that, we will be using Grasshopper together with Vray for Rhino. And the logic of it is, if I have, let me make a print screen and create a new file here, paste it here. If I have this object, right, and let me actually do something like this. Okay. So if we have an object like this, then to set it up so that we can have a 360 degree view, we need to set up a camera, right? And we need to set up a camera path. So a camera works in a way that, let me just grab a red color. Good. So the camera works in a way that it has a target point and it has a position point, right? So you're looking towards the target with the camera. So like that. So in this case, our target point needs to be at the center of the mass of this element, right? So somewhere in the middle of the element. And the position of the camera needs to be in a circle, any point of a circle around that center point of the camera, right? So the camera is going to be moving, right? But it's always going to constantly be looking at the center point from different points of view, right? So we need to set that up in Grasshopper. Back in Grasshopper, I can, well, the first thing that I need to do is obviously reference in the mesh, right? So I'll just create an empty mesh container. Here, right click, set one mesh, hide the mesh in Rhino. Yeah. And I will be, of course, uploading this as a separate video on YouTube, as a tutorial video, and you can double check it, right? And see if you get stuck, you can see what you need to do. So we have our mesh here, and with Vray installed, you get, let me find it here, Vray. You get this Vray tab, which has a bunch of ways on how you can create lighting, geometry, materials, and how you can render it out through Grasshopper rather than through Rhino, right? So there's a link between Vray for Rhino and this Grasshopper plugin, which is really nice. And then if we look through the tools that this plugin for Grasshopper has, it's Vray geometry, Vray instancer, proxy mesh. You can create lights, You can add materials, and then there's this whole render node. And if you hover over each tool, it will tell you what it does. So in this case, you'll need to bear with me because they just updated it and I haven't had the chance to catch up with the updates. So I might be a little bit stumbling with this plugin, but we will make it work. So we will figure something out. Okay, so first of all, geometry, right? Not geometry, sorry. First of all, let's create a Vray camera. Right, so Vray camera node can be used to set a specific camera position and field of view angle. Okay, so Vray camera is that right here, and you can see the Vray camera is created on our screen. So then we have to, well, we have a bunch of inputs, but we only care about two. I'll go through other ones as well, but for now, just two inputs that we care about are here, position and target. So this is exactly what I was talking about in the Photoshop example, right? You have the position of the camera and you have the target point where the camera is looking at. Back to Rhino. So first of all, the target point, right? For a mesh, I want to get its center point, right? So there are many ways of how I can do this, but the fastest one for me is just creating a bounding box for the mesh, like that. And then getting the center point of that bounding box. So there are two ways of how to do it. You can either use a value box and then use 0.5 for all three of these values, or you can just simply measure the volume. This guy right here. You can just measure the volume of the bounding box, like so, which gives you the volume, but it also gives you the volumetric central, which is the center point, in this case, of this box. So this is slightly, like computation-wise, is slightly slower, but honestly, we're just dealing with one box, so we don't care. It's 7 milliseconds, so that's fine. So we do have, now if I hide everything else, hide the camera as well, we do have that center point here. And for clarity purposes, let me just create an empty point container here and call it center, or even better, focus point. This. So that's our focus point. And now we need, so now we've done this guy, right? This focus point. Now we need the circle, right? And we need to iterate the points, the camera position around that circle, on every point of that of that circle. So back here, I will be creating a circle, CNR. CNR stands for center, normal, and radius. So a circle from the center point, the normal, and the radius. I will be using, let me enable the mesh so that it's easier to understand. I will be using that focus point as the center point of the circle, like this. Right? So you can see that the circle is created around the center point and it's flat compared to the ground plane, which is perfect for us. So we don't need to mess around with a normal vector at all. And the radius, I can kind of play around with how far away is the camera, will the camera be from my element. So for the radius, we're dealing with centimeters here, so I'll just say, let's try 30 centimeters, something like that. So we have a circle around our shape, right? So now I can create a point on that circle that will be moved for every step of the animation, right? And as the animation goes forward, the camera will be moving along the circle. To do that, I will be using a tool that's called evaluate length, which basically asks us for a curve, and a circle is a curve, right? So we just connect it like so. And it asks us for the length factor. Then the key thing here is the word factor, which means that we work with values in between 0 and 1, right? So if I do 0.5, for instance, just to explain it, right? And I kind of move it around, need more resolution, 0.5000. That. If I move the slider around now, you can see that the point is moving around my circle, right? So that's going to be the position of the camera. Okay. And let me just create a point container. Not container, just point, connect it, and rename it to camera position. Something like that. All right. So now I can, I have 2 points, right? I have the focus point and I have the camera position point, right? And the camera asks me for those 2 values. So I'll just put in the camera position into position and plug in focus point to target, like that. Now if I enable the preview of the camera, you can see that it's looking directly, from the position towards the center. And if I rotate, or not rotate, but if I go through the curve like that, length elevation of the curve, it will rotate around my object. That's super. This is the moment where we can start kind of rendering it out, right? So here we have the output of the camera is just camera, right? I will create a Vray render tool, not tool, node, Vray render, which also asks me for a bunch of inputs. Oh, speaking of inputs, here you have much more inputs. I will come back to those once we have everything set up, but for now, let's just ignore these. So the first input is engine. Switches between CPU and GPU render engines. Honestly, since this is a really fast thing to render, it's just a single element. Let's stick to CPU. And you can see that by default, it's using 0, which means that if it's set to 0, it's going to be using your processor. If it's set to 1, it's going to be using your graphics card. So in this case, I'll be using the processor. So 0 is fine. So I'll leave it as default. Mode, interactive or production rendering mode. For now, I will have it as interactive. Again, it's either 0 or 1. So 0 for interactive, 1 for production. So I'll have it as 0. Sampler, switches between progressive and bucket sampler. Yeah, we don't care. We leave it as default. Quality-wise, we don't care. Output image, we will be adding stuff to this. We will want to output every image that is rendered out, but for now, we will keep it as it is. Output resolution, so this is how big the image is going to be, and you can see it's 2 numbers here. By default, 960 by 540 pixels. If I create a new panel, so just // if I create a new panel, and I type in 600 by 400, I don't know. something like that. So 600, enter 400. So there are 2 lines of text, and if I connect them to output resolution, it's going to turn red, and it's going to say data conversion failed from text to integer, meaning that since we have 2 lines of text here, or numbers here, it's not recognizing the numbers as numbers anymore, but rather it's recognizing that you're trying to put in a poem or some sort of text to it. To fix this, all we need to do is just right-click on the panel and choose multi-line data. Right? So first line is 600, second line is 400. So it's multi-line data by right-clicking on the panel. Then you have an input for camera. Super. We have a camera output here and camera input here. Might as well connect them. Right? Okay. Zoom in here, all this stuff, like that. Then you have a light rig, so we will need to set up the lights for this. You have light. So light rig and light are 2 different things in Vray, in Grasshopper, because you can have like a sun system rig or a simple light rig and so on here, or you can just create regular lights. We will be just creating sorry, we will be just creating regular lights, but that's again later. Then you have Vray geometry, right? So up until now, we just had the mesh here, and it would not render out if we tried to, because the render engine itself is not connected. Like the mesh is not connected to the render engine, so it's not going to render it out. If I were to just grab my reference in mesh and just kind of create this long wire and connect it to Vray geometry, like that, it's going to turn red. And if I click on it, it's going to say invalid cast mesh to Vray geometry node, right? So it's expecting some sort of local Vray geometry node to be connected to this guy. Instead, we're just pushing a mesh through, which doesn't work. So I need to disconnect it. And instead, for this mesh, I'll go to my Vray tab here, geometry. I'll choose Vray geometry, and that, which asks me of 2 things. First one is what's the geometry, so I just connect the mesh to it. And the second one is what's the material, that I want to use. So that one is going to be in materials. I can choose either Vray material from project, or I can create a material by myself here in Grasshopper. So I'll show you both. I'll just put down Vray material simple, and also I'll put down Vray material from project. Okay. So first of all, Vray material from project has this kind of arrow sticking down, and then I can choose from black, gold, or red. So from the materials that I already have in the file, so I can choose gold. And I can connect it like so, and it's not going to complain at all, right? So you can create a material in Rhino, and then just use this Vray material from project and just connect it like so. Or we can simply use Vray material simple and just create a material by ourselves here in Grasshopper. So it has all of the basic inputs that you might need, such as the diffuse color. So for diffuse color, we can use swatch. That's not how you write swatch. That's how you write swatch, color swatch. And I can connect it like so and just choose a color that I want. Something like that. Then you can choose reflection, right? So reflection color of material. This one, just like in Vray or Rhino, just like in the regular asset editor, only works. You should only work with grayscale colors, with grayscale tones, unless you're doing metallic objects, right? So in this case, for reflection color, I'll also create a swatch. And I'll just choose some sort of a mid-gray tone, like so. Since I want this to look plasticky but not metallic. Glossiness-wise, if I hover over this, you can see that a value of 1 means perfectly mirror-like reflection, and lower values produce blurry reflections, right? And by default, it's set to 0.85. Actually, 0.85 is fine, but just for clarity purposes, I'll just do 0.9, just to connect something to it, right? Index of reflection or index of refraction is, remember that IOR lookup table that I showed during the tutorial, so that's exactly that. 1.3 or 1.6 is usually the default values, and we will not be messing around with that. If you want some opacity, you can create it here. So 1 will be 100% not see-through, and 0 will be completely see-through, right? I would not suggest using opacity for your elements. So we will leave it as a default as 1. And then we have emission color, which is if you want your element to shine light, then you can add a color for emission. But in this case, we don't, so we will leave it as it. So that's how you use simple material creator in Grasshopper. I will be just deleting it, and instead I'll be old school, and I'll be just using Vray material from project, choosing my, let's say, gold material, connecting it like so. And now I can go here and connect my Vray geometry output to my Vray geometry input of the render node, like that. Okay, and then we have 2 more things, timeline and elements. For elements, we don't care at all. For timeline, later. This will be important for the rendering purposes. But for now, we are just going to render out a test static scene just to see how it works. Right? So I can select this node. I can right-click on it. You need to right-click on the name of the node on the render, right? Right-click, and then you choose to render. Right? So you click on render. And it's going to start rendering out your image. Oh, again, if it's going to start lagging, let me know. I can then take the length slider that I have for my evaluation, evaluate length node, and I can move that slider, and you can see, how do I do this? Let's do it like this. You can see, you'll be able to see that the camera is moving, right? And the render is updating according to the position of the camera. So as you can probably tell, we're pretty close. If you want the angle to not be perfectly horizontal to your element, then all you need to do is just move the circle, move the circle up, so in Z direction, by, I don't know, 2 centimeters. And instead of using the original circle, you will be using the move one, right? Like that. Let me hide the original circle. And now we can control how high the camera is, right? And also the angle of the camera. Like that. Okay. That's that. Actually, let's keep looking at it. So we have everything set up for rendering. Let me stop the render now. Now we need to set it up so that it automatically renders out the animation for you, right? So all of the elements are rendered out for you. I will go to the render tab here in Grasshopper, and I'll choose Vray timeline. Vray timeline, like this. And here, what this guy does is it basically generates, once it finishes rendering one render, it will, let's say, we start off from 0. So it renders out one element where the timeline is at 0, and then it will move upwards and continue rendering, and then render out the second render. Then it will render out the third render, and so on, right? So it will keep increasing this timeline slider. There are things that we need to fix here. Not to fix here, but to tell it. Basically, how long is the animation going to be? And also, how many... Wait, that's weird. We'll figure it out. So first of all, how long the animation is going to be, and that is calculated through frames. How many frames is it going to render out? Usually, for really smooth animations, you use 60 frames per second. So in this case, by default, it's set to be 30 frames. So it would be like half a second animation. Or if you are uploading to YouTube, or you want it to be a little bit more compressed, then you can use 30 frames per second. It's not going to be perfectly smooth, but it's going to be really definitely good enough. In this case, we will be using 30 frames per second. So then we just do a quick math, right? Let's say we want animation to be 5 seconds long, right? So it will go around the whole circle in 5 seconds. That means we need, and we are using 30 frames per second. That means we need to multiply 30 by 5, which means we need 150 frames. 150. Connected like so. Right? And then it asks us for the first frame, which should be rendered, and the last frame that should be rendered. So I will be using that 150 as my end. Right. Since it starts, yeah, that's always the case. Since we will start rendering it out from frame 0, right? From the start. So I will be just creating a panel that's a 0 and connect it here. And since we're starting to render it from 0, right? 150 frames, if you start counting from 0, the last one is going to be 149. Right? Like that. And you can see this kind of gray box appeared, and this just shows us the range which is going to be rendered out, and it's basically that box just covers the whole thing, right? If I were to reduce this to 100 and just 100 frames, let's say, that gray box is, it stops at 100, meaning it will only render out the first 100 frames, and then it will stop the render, even though the animation might go longer. In this case, we want to render out the whole thing, so 149 is the end. It's always one unit smaller than the actual amount of frames that we have. Okay, so the output that we get is from this guy is timeline, frame, and fraction. So timeline is a native internal output for Vray or for Grasshopper. And we just simply connect timeline output to timeline input of the render node, like that. And don't ask questions. Frame-wise, it's just going to count at which frame we're currently at, and that's fine. I mean, we don't need to do anything with it. We will not be using this. What we will be using, though, is the fraction, right? So here, where is it? Where we have our evaluation node, here it's using this slider, which is in between 0 and 1, right? So instead of using that slider, we will be substituting it with this output of a fraction. If you hover over the output, it will tell you exactly what it does. The main thing is that it produces values between 0 and 1. That's exactly what we need. And for every frame, it's going to be increasing the value more and more until it reaches 1. Okay? So for fraction, I will be just connecting it to my length input of evaluation instead of the slider. So it's automatically going to be moving the camera as we're going to be rendering. Okay, so now we have that going on. This is the first step. Second step is where the heck is it? Output image, right? Output image. So every frame that you render out, you want it to be saved automatically to somewhere on your computer, right? So I'll be just creating a new folder. I'll call this tutorial frames, something like that. Tutorial frames. And I'll jump back to Rhino. We don't need that. Come on. Okay. I'll jump back to Rhino. And here, where it says output image, it asks me for a file path, right? So back in the params tab, the first tab that we have, under input, you can find, or you can't find, oh crap, where is it? Not here, not here. Oh, there we go. It's under primitive. Sorry, not under input. Under primitive, you have file path, right? So file path. I will connect it to my output image input. Right-click on it, and I will choose to select a directory. Or wait. No, let's try. Yeah, let's try select a directory. We'll see what happens. I don't. Yeah, this is where I'm going to start stumbling around. Select the directory. I'll just go to tutorial frames. That's okay. We'll just see if it's going to work or not. Once I have everything set up here, I can right click on the render again. And instead of choosing to render, I'll choose to render animation, and we'll see what happens. Like that. Yeah. So you can see it's in the bottom, it says rendering frame 3 out of 150. And if I check my, not here, if I check my tutorial frames, 3, it's okay. Okay, it's not saving. Now it's time to try and fix this. It's not saving because I haven't specifically told it to save a file. Rather, I just told it to save a. I just gave it a folder, but not what kind of file it should create. So let's try. Oh no. Vray. Let's see if it's maybe here. No, it's not here. No, it's not here. No, it's not here. So it is this guy. Okay, let's try it like that. Right click on it, select a new file location, and I'll go to my tutorial frames, and I'll here, instead of new directory, I'm choosing new file location, and I'll just say test1.jpg. Like that. Or not even test1, just test.jpg. Like that. Save. Okay, and now we create render animation. Oh, there we go. Nice. Wait. Yeah, there we go. So that's the second frame that it's creating. So it's going to keep saving the frames for me, right? I stop, let me stop the render because we need to make it better. But now you can see if I go through the images, you can see the rendered result. Okay, so that worked. Let me just delete these. Go back to Rhino. Now we need to make it pretty, right? Because now it's not pretty. First thing that I want to check with it is whether or not if I choose to, if I change something here in directly in Rhino. So for instance, if I don't use a background image, but rather I use some sort of color, let's say background is completely red. If I use this kind of a color and I choose to render, yeah, it's not reacting. Okay, that's what I was expecting. Or is it? No, it's not reacting. Okay, so it's completely disconnected from Rhino's Vray asset editor, except one small case where it's right here where we grab the material that we have created. Besides that, it's completely disconnected. I believe there's a way on how to, yeah, Vray render in project. Let's see. Yeah, so we can use render in project mode, and then things will start working, so to say. But in this case, since it's a very simplistic render that we're trying to do, we will not be using this node, and I will be giving a tutorial on this in next week. Yeah, next week we will need to use this, but now just to keep it as short as possible, I'll be not using that. I am trying to delete it. Come on, delete. Oh no, now it's bugging out. So from time to time, this happens where it's not delete, delete. From time to time, this starts happening where the render, not the render, the Vray nodes in Grasshopper will not delete properly and so on, and it's just registering as if I was writing it down in the command line, as you can see here, the deletion. This is a bug, at least as far as I know. This is a bug, and the only way to fix it is to restart Rhino completely. So let me actually, yeah. So I will not be doing that. Instead, I will try to, yeah, okay, so that works. I'll try to work with a broken version, but just keep in mind, if this happens, you just save your files, close Rhino, open it up again, and it will work. It will continue working. All right, so moving on. We need lights for this guy. Right? So I will just start rendering and let's just see. So the engine is still, the CPU mode is still interactive. We will need to fix those things, but for now it's actually better. Let me disconnect the path. While I'm changing things, I don't want the renders to be saved, right? So I'm just disconnecting the file path so that they don't automatically get saved. And let me start the render. And not render animation, but just a regular render. Like that. And let's see, how can we make this nicer? So, light-wise, I can create a very light rectangle. Right? Like that. Or actually, can we just use... I want to try one thing. So this, I can't delete things, so I'll just keep moving them away. I want to try very light rig symbol. I never tried it, so might as well test it out. Very light rig symbol. So light rig is basically, it will create, does it show? No, it doesn't. It will create a bunch of different lights for you preemptively, so that you don't need to specify every single light source out there. So let's just see how this would actually work. That doesn't do anything at all. But let's see. Gradient. Okay, so this is a toggle. If I turn this off, you can see the gradient in the background. Let me turn it back on. So if this is true, there's a gradient in the background, right? If I turn it off, there's no gradient. And actually, I want this to be clean, so I will turn off the gradient. Reflection environment. We will keep this turned on just so that it has something to reflect, which is fine. Global illumination should always be on, so that's fine. We leave it as it is. And this is global illumination environment color. So if I say toggle, not toggle, sorry, that's a color, so swatch. Color swatch. Like that. And I change the color to red. You can see what happens, right? So that's global illumination environment color. So I can play around with this. Honestly, I will leave it as somewhat gray, or maybe light gray, something like that. It's fine. Then we have light. Is it on or off? And it's a directional light, right? So if I toggle, if I turn this light off, then it's just the global illumination that is producing a light for me. So I can kind of show it with, with the colors here, like that. So there's no direct light. It's just this kind of soft light that's bleeding from all angles at the same time. Back to gray. So in this case, okay, let's do it this way. So I will turn off the directional light. I will have this turned off because the thing that I want to do is, instead of having a directional light, which is very, it produces very hard shadows, I want the shadows to be somewhat softer, but not that soft. I still want some sort of a light source that is directly hitting the shape from one side, but I will be creating it by myself rather than using the directional light from the rig that we have here. So that's a light rig. Then you have just light input, right? So let's create one rectangular light. Vray light rectangle. Place it here. Connect it to, so light rectangle connects to light input, like so. Not light rig input, the light input, like so. And we can adjust many things about it. So again, just like with the camera, the main things to adjust are position and target, right? So in this case, what I can do is I can create 2 points in my scene. So, or rather, sorry, not 2 points. I can create 1 point in my scene, right? And I can reference it in point. I can reference it into Grasshopper, and I can connect it to my position of the light rectangle. And you can see it's kind of here. And if I were to check how it, where's my freaking, okay, if you lose your render window, you can just simply right click on your render node and choose show frame buffer, right? And it will, okay, or not, or freaking not. Let's try it again. Oh, there we go. There it is. Found it. So that light rectangle is somewhere, somewhere in the scene, and it's right now anchored to the point that I've made. So if I move the point, the rectangle is going to move together with the point, like that. And I'm just trying to position it in a way that you can see it in the render. That, like that. Okay, so I have that going on. Target, well, we want to shine light on this geometry, right? On this shape. So the target, I can just simply take the focus point that we have already created, the center point of our shape, and just connect it as my target for the light rectangle. So now it doesn't matter where I position it, it's always going to be looking towards the center of my shape, which is really nice. So we have that. Then we have color, intensity, and the size, right? So in this case, I care about the size. I don't really care about the intensity or color for now. I will be changing those. So size-wise, this is like 2 by 2 centimeters by default. So I'll just do like 20 by 20 something like that. It's completely overkill, I know, but that's fine. So I can make it smaller or bigger with less. Right now it's killing our geometry. So I'll turn it invisible first. So invisible is definitely a toggle. Come on, I keep mispronouncing. Toggle. Boolean toggle. Invisible. True. So the light is going to still shine, but it's not going to be rendered out. And then intensity is how strong it is. And by default, it's set to 60, right? So I can choose 50. And I can kind of make it weaker or stronger, depending on what I want. For now, I will just use 8, something like that. Okay, so we have this going on. That's good. Then we have color of the light. But before we work with the color of the light, let me explain one thing. So usually if you're doing a product render, something like this, you usually have 3 lights, and those 3 lights have names. They are named and they're industry standard. So you have a light, in the strongest light that you have is in the back of your model, right? So right here in the back, I have a light that's shining, that is the strongest light of the whole scene, and it's shining at the back of my model, right? And what it does, it produces this glow, right, for the silhouette of the model. This enables me to read the silhouette much better, right? Because the silhouette starts creating these highlights. And that is called the rim light. The second one is the main light, which is, in my case, is shining from left to right on top of these surfaces in particular, but also most of the surfaces. And I colored it orange so that you can tell the difference. So the orange light is the second strongest, and I think for the backlight I've used 200 intensity. For the side light I've used something like 20, so 10 times weaker. And so the orange light, which comes from the left, is the main light. And then I have a blue light that is coming from the right, and it's a light that's used to soften the shadows. A light that's used to color the shadows and also make them not, to control how dark they are. So to get, back here, to get information in the shadows as well. And that's just, I don't remember the name of it, but let's just call it shadow light, right? So there are usually 3 lights in the scene. The problem with this, well, not a problem. It won't work on this setup. And that's because it's not our element that is rotating, but rather the camera that is rotating around the element, right? Meaning that if you have one light source that is really strong and it's shining light from the back, as you're going to be rotating the camera, that light source is going to stay in the same place, and it's going to mess up your render, because at a certain point it's going to be over bright. So a way to fix it is by, instead of rotating the camera, so having the camera fixed, rather rotating the model itself, or just not using that kind of three lights rig that I was talking about. But for static images, for sure, I believe it's a very good setup to have. In this case, I will be just using one light, And I'll be, let me color it swatch. Let me color it somewhat beautiful blue. Like that. Maybe make it more intense. There we go. This is, of course, I will be changing the light color, but this is just to show what kind of control you have. So that's the light color, and then we have a global illumination environment color. So if I change this to red, dark red, you can see that now my environment is shining red light on my geometry, and my direct light is blue, and which kind of looks cool. But this is just to show you what kind of a control you have over your render. So honestly, for the environment color, I'll choose something that is cold. So cold, blue, light, a little bit darker, something like that. And for my, maybe less intense in the color spectrum, so something like that. And for my direct light color, I'll be choosing something that's warm. Something like that, and it'll be warmer. Super. And now we're almost there, right? Because we have the light setup, and the only thing to do is to set up the material as well. And remember, the material is the only thing that is connected between Grasshopper and Rhino Vray asset editor, right? So I can go into materials, and I can go into gold, and here I can start changing a few things about it. So first of all, actually, let me rename gold to animation tutorial, like that. And I will just choose it to be somewhat dark gray. Doesn't update. That's nice. Do we need to? Oh yeah, it doesn't update because this is freaking out because we changed the name of the material. So I need to reference it. So now I will choose animation tutorial. There we go. So now we have our dark gray material here. It's just slightly brighter. Apparently, every time when we change something about the material, we will need to re-reference it in here because it's freaking out. Black, there we go. And here I'll just change the reflection color. So let me stop the render and let's set it up here. So reflection color, I'll just choose that it's somewhat reflective, maybe quite a bit reflective, something like that. And reflection glossiness, I'll just change to 0.9 so that the lower the number is, the more blurry the reflections are. So actually 0.8 is fine. And I don't really need to do anything about it anymore. This is good enough of a material for, this is good enough of a material for kind of rendering out these kind of shapes. If you want to, you can also create a tool material, and you can use your animation tutorial as your base, and then it will create these kind of outlines for your shape. But honestly, I will be just using the regular animation tutorial material. So back here in Grasshopper, I'll switch to generic and switch back to animation tutorial just to make sure that it's updated. Right click, render. So that's how it looks like. Okay. Now let me figure out a position for the light. So right now it's a little bit too high up. Maybe we can push it down and maybe move it back a little bit. Something like that. Oh, wait, I have a... What if I create a copy of this point? What if I have 2 points here and I just, instead of using 1 point for position, what if I use 2? Set multiple points. Oh, nice. It just creates 2 lights. Okay, we can use that. So I'll move one light far out and the other one is going to be close by, right? So the thing that you will get from the light that is far out is just reflections in your reflected element, right? But it's kind of nice that it worked that way. Anyway, so we have everything working here. That's super. Let me stop the render, and now we will set up for the final output of the animation, right? So I'll reconnect the path to my output image input. That's important so that it saves every frame that's rendered out. And for output resolution, I'll be using a full screen, high definition HD resolution. So 1920. That's cool. It's not working. 1920. Enter. It's bugging out so bad. Enter. Oh my god, I can't. Okay. Let me save the document, desktop, Vray, tutorial, save, close it, file, save, close it. That's what you save. That's what you need to do if it's bugging out. Load it up again. There we go. And grasshopper. Tutorial 1920, enter 1080. 1920 by 1080. That's very, very much default resolution. Right now, we are moving into 4K displays and 4K resolution, but honestly, this is still, for something like this, this is still pretty fine. Yeah, and then wait. One last thing. I will disconnect the path just to check one thing, which I didn't check before. I'll just hit render. Yeah, okay. I was just checking if the, let me stop there. I was just checking if the element is too far or too close to the camera. Sorry, if the camera is too far or too close from the element, but this seems to be quite balanced, quite good. But if the camera is too far or too close, the thing that you change is the circle radius, right? So if you want it closer, you just make the, if you want it closer, you just make the circle smaller, right? And for the camera path, if you want it bigger, you just, further away, you just make the circle bigger. That's simple. Like that. Okay, so I reconnect the path again to output image. And now I will be changing the mode. I will be changing the mode from interactive to production, right? So I'll just right click on the mode input. You don't need to plug anything into it to make it work. Just right click on the mode input, set option, and you choose production. And that's it, right? So now it's not going to, right now it's going to create a pretty, not high resolution, but high quality render rather than the quick interactive render that we're used to seeing, which is noisy and so on. Okay, save document, right click, render animation. And this takes a while, of course, because it needs to render out 150 images. But by the end of the, I don't know, like it's going to be what, 10 seconds per, not 10, 20 seconds per image, maybe more, maybe half a minute per image. So it is going to be a few hours until it finishes rendering out the animation, but by the end of it, you will have a 360-degree view of your element. And it's still a little bit noisy, but I believe that's fine, right? So this is what each one of you needs to do, because we will be documenting your models in this way. And I'm trying to, there we go. So this is something that you need to do, and we will be documenting your models in this way. And the problem is that you will end up with a list of images, you know, a series of images rather than a movie, right? So you need to use an external program, a third-party program that will join those images up in the movie. And I can do that for you. That's absolutely fine. But what I want you to do is, once you have rendered out these 150 images of the camera rotating around your model, either send it over to me through WeTransfer or anything like that, or upload it to the school server by yourself, right? So you would just go to, where is it? Come on. Okay, you would just go to temp, unprotected, created tools, element library, for new folder, image, sequence, or images, whatever you want to call it. Then you just copy in your images into that folder, right? And then I'll be able to take them and create a video from them. Let me stop the render, just so that it's that it doesn't flag. But now we have 5 images done, and if I scroll through them, you can see. If I scroll through them, you can see, the start of the animation taking place. So we will have 14 videos of all of your element types, except element type 1, because that's very simple and we don't need it. And by the end of the course, we will have one big video that will be pretty damn cool, and you can put it on your portfolios and so on. And that's that. So that's the end of this tutorial. Do you have any questions about what you do, or about any logistics of it and so on?